Hi, everyone. Edric here from the EPIC podcast, the podcast where anybody can inspire everybody. This week, we've managed to invite Mr. Steve Sir, the CEO and co founder of FloShip. FloShip provides fulfillment as a service from Hong Kong to the rest of the world in a seamless and easy way for online retails and brand owners worldwide. Steve's going to be here to share a little bit more about his personal experiences in entrepreneurship, his journey, all the way from the US to China, and finally based over in Hong Kong. And if this is your first time on this channel, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe to our videos and our channels. Thanks again. Maybe we could start from the beginning as well. Like, for example, for those who are listening as well, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about FloShip first.
Yeah, sure. FloShip, we are a tech-driven e-commerce logistics company. We're based here in Hong Kong. So our clients are actually very global. It's not, just the Hong Kong market. I would say even Hong Kong market is probably like 10% of our business in terms of clientele, maybe even less than that. And, basically if you're an online retailer selling your own products, not really so much of like an Amazon seller or an eBay seller where you're relying on marketplace ads or listings, but you're more accountable for your own marketing and your branding. And so there's a lot of brands that have migrated to Shopify, for instance, as like a shopping cart software, or like Magento or ecommerce, et cetera. They're building their own brands. And so that's the clientele that we really focus on. And we're trying to simplify a lot of their e-commerce supply chain activities. We have our own proprietary software where you can log in and understand all of your orders, your tracking statuses, your inventory levels. We have various integrations to various platforms. If you're doing e-commerce and you're trying to be a global brand, you need to ship your orders, all over the world, or you need to have multiple warehouse locations. And so, FloShip, we have warehouses in Hong Kong, in Shenzhen, in the US, in Europe, or specifically Lithuania right now. And then sooner or later, we'll be launching in the UK. With Brexit going on, that's made things a bit more complicated. We primarily focus on providing services for online retailers and helping them scale up globally.
Right. And now, when did you start FloShip?
Yeah, we started in 2015 February. So it's been about, is that 6 years? Yeah, 6 years now.
Yeah, but it feels like 10 though.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because the amount of work that you put in and the journeys, stories, whatever you go through, definitely feels like 10. But yeah.
Oh, so it's 6 years in the business now. I love to be able to do this with all my guests, which is really track back and really understand the stories, because even though I would say that everybody's struggle is similar, but our stories are always so unique and different. You're a Korean American, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and you're born and bred in Penn State.
Or Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
The state.
So,
yes, that's right.
So then you decided one day that, hey, I'm gonna work in Asia. So how old were you then, and what exactly kind of led you down that road?
Sure. Yeah, so I was about 27 years old. I had all of my experience basically in corporate America. Believe it or not, I was in pharmaceuticals or healthcare. I'm sure you know of the names like AstraZeneca now because of the vaccine.
Yep.
That was my first company I worked for. And then there's a more mid-sized pharmaceutical company called Shire that I worked for. And that was a total of about six years or so, including my internship experience even in healthcare. But yeah, a very, small potato, in a big company. For me, it was more like I like saying that, hey, I put in this amount of work, and as a result, this is the result that I was able to bring to the table. And I saw that China was really coming up, and I have a good like 30 or 40 years of my career left, right? And this is no longer an economy where U.S. is superpower. There was a very key stat that stuck with me. was actually one of the events that I put together. It was called basically like doing business in China and India. It was just I was just so curious about it, right? So why don't I just put an event together and understand more about what it would be like to actually work in China or understand a little bit more about the economy and business in China. So the words that stuck out to me was like, hey, you're doing all this reading, you're doing this research on China, and this is why you're here at this event. But what's most important is you got to go to China. You have to feel it. You have to see it for yourself. And when one of the speakers said that spoke to me loud and clear. I was like, hey, I'm doing this event, but like, why am I not going there and exploring, understanding myself? So yeah, I took those words to heart, and I actually left corporate America, and I booked a 3-week trip in Asia, specifically in Shanghai and in Hong Kong. And yeah, that was just groundbreaking for me because when you're in the US, you live in this bubble. You think US is the greatest, you have the best life and all those things. But as soon as I landed in Shanghai, I was like, wow, you know what? Actually, this is a pretty internationally developed city, and this was back in 2011, right? Maybe in 2010. But even at that time, you had a lot of expats working there, and I said to myself, you know what? I might not actually suffer by living here. Actually, I could get by, and I was still a single guy, so I had like really nothing to lose. And so yeah, that trip really opened my eyes, and actually, even during that time, I there was an organization that I got involved with back in the U.S. called the National Association of Asian American Professionals, and I will not regret any moment that I spent. I mean, I feel like I've learned so much through that organization. I wasn't getting paid to be involved, but I really was able to get a great network of professional people, mentors, leaders that I could just contact and say, hey, do you know anybody in Shanghai that I can meet? Just so I can understand a little bit more about how to do business in China or how you became successful in China. And that's the same thing in Hong Kong. I had multiple meetings lined up, and I'm just learning, right? Is this a place that I could really live and find myself being successful, right? So that's what really gave me the confidence, to be honest, to say, I'm not just going out to China on a whim, right? Like I didn't see what it's like, and then I don't want to be surprised and have this culture shock of going to Asia. Actually, I did my research, not just like being in the US, but actually seeing it with my own eyes. And when I came back to the US, actually right before I came back to the US, when I was in Hong Kong, there was someone that was kind of incubating or kind of getting her startup off the ground, and she said that she was looking for someone with maybe business development experience. Frankly speaking, I had no business development experience. I was a supply chain guy. But that's what I wanted to do, right? Because when you're doing a startup, you're building, and you have to, you want to use your business sense a little bit more. And so I took that opportunity. I worked pro bono, even at home in the U.S. for about a good 6 months when I came back on that Asia trip. But that was, if anybody's even trying to venture into startups, I'd highly recommend getting some sort of experience yourself. Many people are like, oh, I'm getting this nice, I got a lucrative job, I need to pay the bills or whatever. But, if you have some savings, right, you could take a little bit of a leap of faith and do something to just get that experience of a startup. And then you'll maybe understand, like, is a startup really for me? Can I do this? The other thing is you put it on your resume, and when you interview with a startup, the fact that they've seen you having startup experience really sticks out a lot, right? It's showing that you're willing to take risks. You really want to do a startup or get involved with a startup. So yeah, I mean, I really try to work on that startup for about a good 6 months, and then what I just realized is that if the founder, if the team is really based somewhere else, like let's say in Hong Kong and I was in Philadelphia, totally different time zones, and you're not really as involved in the operations. For me, I just said, you know what, I need to move, right? I need to go to China now, right? So at the time, because I was still going off of my savings, I decided to go to Shanghai instead of Hong Kong, because the cost of living in Shanghai is actually a lot less, right? I remember the founder at the time was like, "Hey, I found you a $1,500 per month apartment." Now, $1,500 even in the US is not cheap, right? You can probably find an apartment in the US. I'm not sure what it goes for right now, but you do it for like $500, $700 a month and live okay. And then thinking about tripling that or doubling that, right, in Hong Kong was just huge for me.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I went to Shanghai instead because we're still in the same time zone. And yeah, the cost of living is a lot less. And I was still I wanted to get the practical China experience versus Hong Kong. Um, yeah, I moved to Shanghai, and as soon as I got there, frankly speaking, I just I met a lot of people. And even before I went to Shanghai, there was a college friend who actually was more of an acquaintance. But you go to their Facebook and you see like, hey, who's living in this city, whatever. You reach out, and this friend actually was, I would say, was very, very critical in terms of helping me sort of get my bearings, going when I first landed in Shanghai, right? Like he allowed me to stay at his place, introduced me to his friends, and then it just went from there, right? And that's where it's kind of like it's on your own. Like, hey, you can get all these introductions, but what are you going to do about them, right? And so my first week in Shanghai, I met two very critical people, I would say, for my Asia journey.
Mm.
One of them helped me land my first startup, like official startup job in Shanghai, right? So when I met him, I actually met him at actually both of these gentlemen at a Bible study, right? And you don't really do these things in China so much, but one of them was just selling his company to 4PX, the largest
Oh.
e-commerce logistics company in China. And the other one was a CEO of a digital marketing agency in Shanghai. And he was Caucasian, right? Caucasian in Shanghai and doing the business. You don't see a lot of people doing that. I was really impressed by that. And yeah, the other person that was selling his business to 4PX, he was a Taiwanese American, and being an American and trying to sell your company in China is not very common either, right?
Mm.
So the first meeting I had was with the digital marketing head person. And when I met with him, of course, I'm eager to find maybe another job that I can get paid for now, right? And when he was kind of getting to learn about me, he was like, Steve, as much as you want to get involved in like business development or maybe even marketing, you seem more of like a project manager type, and honestly, I kind of took that a little bit to offense. I'm not gonna
Mm.
lie. But it was okay. I mean, it's like I'll take that feedback. And then the funny thing was, we had that sort of interview on a Thursday, maybe around like a Saturday or Sunday. He gets back to me and is like, "Hey, you know what? My friend is looking for a business development person for the Korea market, and it's a startup that's sort of taking off here in China." I was like, "Okay, well, you're sharing me this business development opportunity. I mean, I'm definitely interested." And so I interviewed for that job on I think it was a Monday. No, sorry, on a Tuesday. And then I passed that, and then immediately the person was like, "Hey, I want you to meet with the CEO the following day," and met with the CEO for about 20 minutes, and he pretty much gave me the job on the spot, right?
Wow.
So that was my first sort of taste of a real startup that was backed by Sequoia Capital at the time.
Mm.
And actually, the company was I don't know, I'm not sure if you heard of Birchbox, but it's a subscription box company filled with like cosmetics, samples and things, and you get a monthly box of these these cosmetic samples
Right.
or products. And so we were the first movers to bring that model into China. Um, and yeah, I mean, I was accountable to bring cosmetics products and Korean products and Japanese products into the China market. And I don't know anything about cosmetics at the time, but I learned a heck of a lot and connected with a lot of the big companies like L'Oreal. In Korea, there's a company called Amore Pacific. Learned a heck of a lot. But for me, it was more, I was learning so much about what a real startup is like, even working with a lot of Chinese colleagues. Maybe about like 4 months in of joining that startup, it actually exited, to a company called Jume.com. But yeah, that was my first sort of startup taste of being in China. And so after the company exited, I had to figure out what do I do next, right? And that's where I got involved with 4PX actually.
And then after 4PX, once you finished that tour already, what was it that you all of a sudden you just went, hey, look, yeah, I can start something up, or there's something I can do better. Was it that mentality that you're doing this, but I can do it better?
Definitely. When I was working at 4PX, I felt like, I mean, it was just remarkable how they were the largest cross-border e-commerce logistics company, like, in the world. At the time when I first joined, they were doing about 150,000 parcels per day.
Wow.
Okay. When I left, which was about 3 years after, they were doing about 1 million parcels per day, right?
Wow.
Just growing so fast. But it was kind of strange to me in some ways because they're focused on technology while they had a lot of engineers. I feel like they're so focused on hiring like cheap people, like trying to get the most bang for their buck.
Mhm.
But I feel like that strategy sort of, you're only going to get so far with your tech, and you're going to have a lot of maybe issues that may happen with your tech. They really relied on manual labor to sort of scale up their volume. But if you really rely on manual labor, then you're prone to a lot of errors and issues along the way. The other thing that I noticed was they had an international sort of sales team, and there was a time when I was working in the overseas BD team in Shanghai with that boss I mentioned earlier, who is my mentor as well. But he actually left the company after about a year, and the company just was trying to figure out, like, okay, what do I do next? Do I maybe take his job, or do I go to Shenzhen and basically help incubate a startup within the company? So for me, of course, like, I wanted to incubate, right? I wanted to just learn and get the most experience as possible, and even be in headquarters in Shenzhen. What I realized was the company wasn't also so focused on the service quality aspect. And when you're working with international clients, it's particularly if they're based in the US or Australia or UK or wherever, their expectations in terms of service are very different, right? 4PX, they had about 30,000 different online sellers selling on Amazon or eBay, but they're mostly Chinese, right? And Chinese people, what they really care about is price. That's the number one factor by a wide margin, okay? But Western clients, of course, they care about price, but maybe similarly comes the service quality, and maybe even the technology. Like, these three things basically have to go hand in hand.
Mm.
And so that was the missing sort of ingredient I saw at 4PX. And that's kind of what the light bulb moment for me. It's I believe you can provide a much better service to fill the needs of this particular demographic. And that's what we and that's what led to FloShip. To build a company that is focused on technology. One, really don't take that lightly at all. Hire great engineers to build a great product. And number two, it's the customer service aspect, right? Make sure your clients don't go around in circles trying to find an answer for something, and also provide them with timely responses, at least within 24 hours. Yeah, I mean, those are the two main pillars that we focused on FloShip.
Right. And then when you had that idea, I mean, were there a couple of people that you reached out to and said, hey, look, I can't do this by myself? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you're not exactly, doing all the programming and the development yourself, but guiding that direction along, having that clear vision. But did you have to amass a number of people to get that done? And how did you work that out, like step by step?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I was very fortunate. I feel like the earlier part of my journey in Asia, I just had so many sort of these, like, I feel like fate moments. Whenever I felt like a door was closing or I wasn't sure, something just opened up. So I believe, like, during my, ending days at 4PX, I made a trip to Hong Kong because my boss at the time at 4PX was said, Steve, there's a guy that's coming to town. He's from the US. He's arguably the largest drop shipper in the US. His name was Jeremy Hanks. He's coming to town. Like, you got to go. At the time, however, I was on a dual entry visa. I had a working visa in China, but unfortunately the HR department kind of slipped there, and I ended up getting a dual entry visa. So I used the first one. And then the second one, I was just reserving for emergency purposes, right? Like, although I really wanted to meet this guy, I couldn't risk it. But on that same day that the event was happening, my boss comes to me again. He said, Steve, you got to go. I think this is a really great opportunity for you. So I said, all right, I'll go, right? Just leap of faith, I'm going. And so we get to Hong Kong, and the Jeremy Hanks is there, and it was about 12 people, all like industry sort of experts in e-commerce or in this drop shipping space. And that's where I met my business partner. I found out, as we were doing the round table introductions, we were doing similar things. And so it was more like, maybe we should build the largest drop shipping company in the world. That was basically our idea. Once again, like, I really felt like it was a fate thing. I probably shouldn't have been at that event, but I went.
All right. Then after that, then came the tough question, right? Who's gonna come up with the money? What's gonna happen there? So how'd that go?
Yeah. So, we were originally bootstrapping the business a bit, and so we're actually profitable from day one.
Wow.
So we could have continued to bootstrap the business, I mean, there was just so much demand in what we're doing, because these Western Island retailers, they couldn't find anybody they can really trust on the ground. But of course, if you want to accelerate this business, it's something that, as a first mover sort of advantage, you want to sort of capitalize on that and try to, grow and invest in the technology as much as you can. And so, I mean, that's where I think about 6 months in, frankly speaking, like, although we were incorporated and we say we started in February 2015, we were actually sort of working on this as a project in around the summer of 2014 and seeing if this idea or this model could really work. And so, 6 months, profitable, gaining a lot of traction. And so that's where, we really had a pitch, to go out to investors. And it was pretty simple pitch. I mean, I would say the first investor, is always the hardest, to get someone that, sort of understands what you're doing. Fortunately, we had, one of the investors that had some supply chain or e-commerce background. And so he was able to bring that knowledge to his firm and was the first investor. And then after that, it was just really easy. People were like, oh, okay, if someone's getting into it, then I want to get into it as well. And yeah, that first round was pre-series A seed round for about $1 million US. And so for sort of my first taste in terms of getting any sort of VC funding. So yeah, it was a surreal moment. Getting $1 million US in your bank account, like that's really cool.
It is. Not many people actually see
now
that
it's
many
like,
zeros, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, most of the time we just see a zero, and that's about it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so just have this one lump sum payment into your account happening out of nowhere. It's like, wow, like, yeah.
Did you go to the market while you were bootstrapping with an MVP, or what did you actually qualify as your MVP? Working prototype, something that was actually tested in the market, or could you show the full system of exactly what you already knew it could do?
Gosh, and I mean, thinking about those times, honestly, I'm like cringing a little bit right now, because yeah, we were
So
basically,
unrefined, right?
oh, I mean, we didn't even have our own software at the time, right? We were basically leveraging, bits and pieces off of NetSuite, basically ERP software, and taking scripts and putting things together. So there are a lot of things that we even relied on people to sort of even like shipping labels, right? Like they would manually write the name of or copy and paste names and addresses onto the shipping label, and get the orders out, right? And so yeah, I mean, we were just working off Excel files, here and there. try to be somewhat system driven by, having our orders maybe uploaded into our software. But yeah, we really didn't have a product or a software at the time. It was just hacking together, a software that's already on the market.
Right. When you actually brought this particular product, in the early days to one of those companies, and they just went absolute flat no. So at the end of the day, when those things happen, do you take it back and still believe that your product it can be what it's going to be something, or do you actually go that this guy he doesn't know what he's talking about? What was the approach
Well,
at the time?
that wasn't so concerning for me, because it only motivated me to start investing in your own sort of R&D and technology. And that's what we did with the $1 million US, right? We hired our first developers, and started to build a product or a UI UX that clients can now log in and have sort of full visibility as to what's going on. And now we're even integrating with your website so that orders can automatically come into our portal versus you taking a CSV file and uploading into our system, right?
Right.
And so, all those times, it's a learning experience. You hear the feedback that you're hearing from the clients, and saying like, oh yeah, like, it'd be great if you can just connect with my system and I don't have to worry about these manual, uploads. I don't have to worry about, which shipping carrier I need to ship with for this order, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we took that feedback and we put that back in the product. But I think, before we raised cash, we had an MVP, something good enough that we can serve clients, make decent amount of money, make profit. It's just getting better, from there.
And on the note of hiring, I find it very, very difficult to actually process this. When you're first starting out and you go, okay, we'll set this up, we got this doing, and we're getting the MVP up and everything. At the same time, right, for improvement, or at least to even build it up further, how do I even get that first hire in that sense? Because if I don't even know how to do it, how do I ask if somebody in the market kind of knows how to do this and could join me?
You know, that's a very good question, because I think, earlier on as an entrepreneur or startup founder, trying to find the right person or the right hires, it's something that is very hard to learn in the beginning. It's like it's hard to hit the jackpot in the
Yeah.
beginning, because when you're earlier on, you may think you know what you want, but then once you get the person, you're like, oh, okay, so this person doesn't really fit the culture, doesn't really work like a startup person. I'll give you an example. It would be nice to have like a finance person on the team, right? And so we decided to go pretty big. And he was the CFO of the finance department, managing 200 people. And so of course you're thinking, oh wow, like this person is so connected in the logistics world or freight forwarding world. But when you're doing a startup, you have to get your hands dirty. Like you're really building something new, like a new finance software almost, even, because you have to figure out how to link finance with the logistics or the operations that we're doing, and try not to make it so complex. And then building processes and not relying on people so much to do a lot of the work. So yeah, when we hired the person, we're hiring, like 8 or 9 people on the finance team, and the sales team maybe has like 4 or 5. Does that make sense, right? Finance should probably be like maybe 3 to 5, of your startup. And so, that's where we understood it's not the culture fit. And we like people that are, like to get their hands dirty, build processes, are efficient. And, I think in a startup, you have to you learn how to work faster, right?
Right.
And be more efficient. So yeah, I think it takes time, to really understand if that person is the right fit. And even today, I'm going to admit it, it's hard. It's hard to really nail down like the hiring until they actually work with you. And so one thing that we do is, it's more of an Asia thing, and I love it. US doesn't really have this. is having a probation period, right? You have a
Mm,
3-month probation period, sort of test the waters. If you don't like the person, you can move on from them. If they don't like you, they can move on from you as well with a very
mm,
short notice period. So yeah, I mean that's really the testing period, and they pass the test and they continue working for us.
right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, to kind of going back to your question, during the early days, we knew that getting a CTO was very important. So at the time, I was just going through my Rolodex of friends and even relatives.
Mm,
And fortunate thing was my close cousin was a software engineer for Etsy, which is like the handcrafts marketplace. So she was already in e-commerce, and yeah, she became our first CTO. And yeah, very very grateful for that one. And then we started having our first engineering team, and so yeah, that was like our beginning days of having our portal, so we can automate a lot more activities for our clients.
So, in your experience, every CEO has that magic question during the interviews, to kind of have that yay or nay factor. What's your magic question?
I mean, I think there's a few out there, but
Mm,
what or have you dealt with any sort of adversity, and what was that particular moment, or what was the moment that you went through so much adversity, but you were able to overcome that? I think the DNA and the perspective of a FloShip person, you have to be very resilient, and so that question to me is very important for me to understand.
right. And I mean, here you are. It seems like it's very, very much pegged onto the company culture that you've kind of determined with your partners and yourself. But do you think that was something that you've set since day one, or it's something that was built and molded along the way, and everybody kind of like, oh, this is how the mojo is?
Yeah, so I have my sort of key values, right? Like,
Mm,
I think it's important for you to understand, well, maybe what are even your own personal values first, right? So my personal values was always going to build a company that was that had integrity, very transparent, um, always thinking about being proactive versus reactive. So those were some of the key things that I knew sort of earlier on. It was always in my head. Um, but yeah, maybe in hindsight, if I ever start a new startup, I would have maybe some values that I would want to set in stone and make it very clear to the staff when they're starting with us. But the interesting thing was, because we felt like culture became really really important around 2017, like 2 years after we launched FloShip. That's where we came up with our FloShip culture deck, right? So we have about 8 or 9 different sort of values that we put in there, and we kind of explain what particular each value means. And so now every staff that joins us, they read the culture deck, they understand what FloShip is about. But the other thing that we're seeing is that over time, your culture or your values start changing as well, right? Or maybe there's something else that you want to add that you're seeing, and you're like, you know what, we need to ingrain some of these values or principles as well. And so that's what I did. Even last year I added ownership, right? It's like, I feel like when people work in your company, it's like they just work like an employee. So they don't really
mm,
care so much. They work their 9 to 5 or whatever, and just contribute. But I think, for our company, I want to see more ownership, because, I try to ingrain a very family culture here at FloShip. And so if you're a family, like anything, even when any mistakes that go on, it's all a part of ours. It's not your mistake, it's our mistake, right? I even had an award last year called the biggest mistake of the month award. Yeah, we don't have it today, but I mean, I just wanted to
is this a
just
Game
put
of
it out
Thrones thing
there.
where you go shame, shame, shame?
I guess you could say, yeah, something like that. But we wanted to make it a little more light, right? Like, we wanted to say, hey, it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes, right? It's you know, and if we know what that biggest mistake is, we're all going to learn together what that mistake was and how we're going to solve and improve on that going forward, right? So that makes sure that everyone else going forward, like, oh, I don't want to make that big mistake again. But it's this whole family thing. It's okay, to mention mistakes. And the other thing that happens is when you're doing an operations heavy business, people can sort of hide, right? It's like, oh, I know I made this mistake, but I don't want to float it up and I don't want to get embarrassed.
Mm,
But what happens in that situation is that small mistake becomes a much bigger and bigger and bigger mistake as the time goes by.
yeah.
And eventually that mistake will surface in itself because, we're an operations company. You're going to see every little thing that
Mm,
goes on. The results will be found out. So yeah, I mean, that's, another key principle that we added into the culture that, starting last year. And so, yeah, it's good to sort of understand where you are as a company. And I think over time, there may be certain values or cultures that may start popping up. But I think, now that we're about 6 years in, we pretty much understand our identity now and what's really important from a DNA standpoint from our staff. Yeah, I mean, it does sort of pop up over time.
right. Fantastic. I mean, I can sense a lot of passion for what you have, in the business and how much you've invested into it. At the same time, I do have this conundrum that I always face is that in a business, right, there's one camp that goes, my passion is my business. On the other hand, is that I'm building a business to fuel other passions. Like, for example, because I am passionate about this particular subject, I can make it into a business. Whereas the other side of it is that I'm building a business that can fuel or support my passions. So somewhat like partly a social enterprise to give back, or is it something that I know that is what I love, and then money follows, or is it because I know that this makes money, I do it, and then I can bring it to something else that needs the money?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would say that, yeah, definitely do something that you're passionate about, but at the same time, are you good at that? Do you have
Mm,
skill sets? Like, are you like the top 1 to 5% of doing that particular job or work? And then the second thing, I mean, of course, when you're doing a startup, and the keywords are for profit, right? It's not nonprofit,
mm,
right? So you have to think about, do I have a business case? Do I have a business model? Yes, I'm passionate about something, but is this something that's going to make money, right? Okay, it could make money, but then what is my business model? It better make sense. I'd love to give an example, like I guess it's not exactly startup oriented, but think about it, someone like a professional athlete or musician or something, right? They're really good at that particular skill,
mhm,
but on top of that, they're really passionate about it. But on top of that, they're very fortunate that they can make a lot of money by doing that particular activity.
mhm,
Right? But on the flip side, if you can be really passionate about something and you can be really really good at something, right? But is there a path, or do you already know that doing that particular job you can make a lot of money doing that?
Would you say that you're not passionate about logistics? Because you know your business inside out. Like what you said is great. You're a logistics and supply chain expert, right? At the same time, would you say that logistics is your passion, or is it because of the people that are your passion, or being in a leadership position, or and bringing joy to those people is your passion? So that's something that I've been toying with, the last couple of months as well. Thinking through a number of things.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, in terms of like my passions, like what am I thinking about? Like I love sports. I love reading. I love music, but there's also the aspect of, yeah, I mean, the people, being able to connect with people, being able to help people. So, through FloShip, I'm able to do that, right? Taking an industry that is, I would say that there's a lot of sort of, cutting corners or corruption, I think, in logistics. But I want to be able to sort of bring more of the good, into the industry. And I feel like in order to do that, well, you have to be relevant as a company, of course, but having great people that sort of are contagious, and they start seeing that, what, FloShip people are all, just great human beings, and then logistics companies are therefore able to understand, like, you don't have to cut corners, you don't have to be corrupt in order to be successful. Like you can actually lead a company that has full of, integrity and great people, and be successful. And that's what I'm really passionate about, to be honest. I mean, when I think about everything, it's really bringing about more good, in this industry, in the overall startup community, even in China, there's so much corruption that goes on there, and so just being, a shining light, and being a good example in the community.
Yeah. So that means that you could start up several different companies if you wanted to, but it could be in so many different industries, but ultimately it's always about that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, of course, you have to understand a bit about what you're trying to solve or what startup you're going to do. Um, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I really love the people aspect of doing this startup, and I think people is 80% of doing this. And what really motivates me, on a day-to-day basis, I'm always thinking about people. Going through each day, I'm thinking, looking around, and how do I motivate this person, or how do I help this person? That's what makes things exciting. And then being able to see this, company really flourish,
Yeah.
Through all that work.
Does it get too
That's
emotionally draining? Like, say, for example, that if a staff is really having challenges, on a personal level, does that end up? Do you get too emotionally and personally invested in these things? That can sometimes also be a challenge, right? Between that work and or professional and personal boundaries, right?
for sure, for sure. I mean, I think when you're a startup entrepreneur or a founder, I mean, just one warning, if I could provide anyone is, think about, are you someone that is like mentally like patient or enduring, resilient? These are, certain things that I even mentioned in terms of FloShip values, but I do think it resonates across the startup community because there's just so many things that goes on, right? From a people standpoint, I mean, the things that I've learned from a people standpoint, yes, there's been some bad things that I had to deal with as well, right? I had to deal with, maybe letting go people, but then that turning out to be a negative thing because they try to do something against you because you laid them off, right? And those aren't fun. And then you have people that are dealing with certain things. Maybe like I have an assistant who, who's in the process of having a second child, but having some complications there, with some bleeding and such, and it's like, affects her, overall mental state, and of course it affects me as well, right? So, but these are things where like you sort of build this sort of I don't know, like maturity, or like sort of maybe even a shell, right? Like you got to say, like, what, there's better days ahead. I mean, whenever there's a bad day, better days ahead, right? And always trying to think positive. And the other thing that's very important, I think, is there may be people in your company that have a negative sort of mentality, like constantly, right? And that negative mentality, because you're interfacing with that person almost on a daily basis, it starts getting to you. It starts taints your view on the company. It takes away from your confidence and things like that. And what my recommendation when you go through those situations is, try to either find a way to get that person to be a little bit more positive, but it's probably not going to be the case because you can't really change people. It's probably best to move on, right? And as a CEO, as a founder, confidence is so key. If you have someone that's constantly sort of bringing you down, don't let that person get out of your way, right? And you want to continue to sort of bring that positive energy, not only for yourself, but for the rest of your staff, because you'll understand that as being a CEO, like how you feel, the emotions that you bring into the room, how you communicate to them, it's contagious, right? And so that's something like that can be a blind spot for a lot of CEOs.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important for your mental state to always be in check, because if you don't really have this, and even from a health standpoint, like maybe you already understand your health isn't the greatest place, it's probably not the best idea to do a startup. I really
Right, it's
think
true.
that.
And speaking of health, I mean, you're very active, I have to say, with so many things. How do you? So what's your daily routine like in terms of keeping your mental and your physical health like?
If you're going through, a lot of stress or, difficult moments, in your startup, there's no better way to just let it out, through doing some heavy weights. Also, well, non-pandemic times, I'm involved in flag football.
Mm.
So
What is
more
flag football, by
American.
the way, for those who are
Yeah,
not familiar?
yeah. So I'm sure everyone's aware of American football, where you wear the pads and you
Hmm.
have the, what do you call it? Like a I can't even describe the shape, like an oval sort of shape
Yeah.
ball, almost like a rugby ball.
Uh-huh.
And the Super Bowl, of course, is the big
Hmm.
time for it. Speaking of which, Super Bowl is tomorrow. And yeah, so there's the tackle version of it where you kind of get a little bit more
That's
physical
full
and maybe
contact,
even
right?
hurt someone, full
Hmm.
contact. But flag football is where maybe you're wearing a belt, and then there's like flags, that are
Oh,
attached to the belt. And so if someone were to take off one of those flags, then you're down, right? You can't
okay.
move anymore, right? And then you go to the next play, right? So it's less physical contact. It's a little bit more related to, like, you have to be fast, I guess, if
Right,
you're running the ball. Um, but yeah, I mean, same rules apply. Catch the ball, run the ball,
right,
get a touchdown,
right.
things like that. And believe it or not, actually, I actually view this as therapeutic. I do I do work on weekends. Okay.
Yeah, you're in the
Now
office on a Sunday, dude.
that that's right. So I do tend to work at least one out of the 2 days, maybe sometimes even two out of the 2 days on the weekends. The reason why I do that is because I find it, when you have no distractions going on, right? You don't have staff coming up to you to address a certain question. You don't have phone calls going
Mm,
on, throughout the day. Um, just distraction free. Being able to do work that you may not have been able to do, and then you're looking ahead of the week, and then trying to just stay ahead, and game plan, and do certain things, so that you're ready for the week. I just find those times very peaceful and therapeutic, believe it or not, because the less sort of emails or things I have in my inbox, I'm a lot more sort of relaxed as I go into my Mondays, right? So something else I do, I'm not sure if it's a great tip, but it works for me. Um, so feel free to try it yourself.
time management for you. Question. Do you chunk your activities into blocks or do you have hourly schedules for yourself?
Great question. So usually I try to leave my lunch hours free. I try not to have any, meetings or anything during that time, because that's my break time,
Mm,
right? It's like I got through my half day, try not to bother me during lunch. I'm there spending time with my staff, having lunches. I try to do that as much as I can. I try not to have too many meetings, by the way. Okay, and I'm trying to remember which entrepreneur, it's Elon Musk that does this as well. But don't have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, right? If you're conducting a meeting, make sure that there is an outcome at the end of it, and also make sure that the meeting is as efficient as possible, right? So
mm,
every meeting should have an agenda,
mhm.
right? And what are you trying to achieve during that meeting? Um, so even my leaders meetings, right? I mean, I would say a lot of companies probably do it on a weekly basis, maybe.
Mhm.
I have it on a biweekly basis, and so the reason why I do that is because maybe the middle of the month is sort of like your checkpoint. It's like, hey, how am I doing on my KPIs? And another thing that we've done here at FloShip is we've organized what's called OKRs, or objectives and key results. So we're very focused on, hey, what's most important. Focus on those, right? What's your objective? How are you going to hit those targets, right? That's all that really matters to us, right? And yeah, those midweek checkpoint, we're understanding how we are in our OKRs, on our KPIs. What do we need to do in order to hit those targets by the end of the month, right? And then the end of the month, or maybe the first couple of days of the following month, we're reviewing how we performed in the previous month. I have an assistant, by the way, a virtual assistant.
Mm.
So that's another trick or a hack, I think. Um, ever since I had my virtual assistant, she takes care of a lot of my administrative work, all the dirty work that that takes a lot of your time, and doesn't really take a lot of like brain power to do. She handles them. And I'm just able to focus on the bigger picture, and trying to, take this company forward with focus on the bigger things, bigger problems. And that's what I even challenge my leaders as well. It's like, if it's something that you probably can solve yourself, it's probably a good idea that you don't bring it up to me. Right. So that's another thing, right? I mean, as a leader, people always want to seek your advice and want to get things done. But you want to empower your people as much as possible, as well, challenge them. And so, once again, as CEO or a founder, you have to figure out how can I always, focus on the bigger things,
Right.
in the company.
And as you've grown your company, right, you've gotten more staff again. One of the things I've always wondered was, how do you maintain an open door policy? The biggest question, right, in every company that I've always worked with was that you've always got this group of people that believe that it's not nobody's going to listen to me anyway. Even if I bring it up, so I'll just bring it up in a peer level, right? But the problem is that it wasn't. It's always shared. Oh, my door is always open. You can always come in. But at the end of the day, you know that nobody's going to walk into that door. And yet it also comes across as in, it's okay if nobody walks into my door. You've seen it for yourself. So how do you keep an open door policy in your own company?
That's a very, very good question. And people say, "Oh, I have open door policy," but then they're wondering like,
But
why don't
half of it
people
is
come to
bullshit.
me?
We know that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I honestly, I don't feel like there's any escaping that. That people may not come to you just because you're the boss or just you're the CEO. Personally, like I don't like that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just something that you can never get away
Right.
from. But in order to sort of encourage that more, I would say that as a CEO or a founder, you have to sort of get away from being this like I'm the boss or I'm the leader, like my way or the highway, like kind of mentality, right? Sort of take down your ego. It's as a founder, it's probably tough to do that because you started this business. You took the risk. You have a lot of confidence as it is, right? But
Right.
you have to learn how to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what are the things that we do here? Well, like I said, I do lunches with my staff. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would say 4 out of 5 days during the week. I really do. And that's me being very relational and you know, uh, I'm fortunate to have people even sitting next to me as we have these lunches. Like, that's a good thing. And the other thing is, even just this past Friday, actually almost after every Friday we'll have like what we call like a social hour.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big games right now on your mobile device is called Among Us.
Yes.
I don't know if you heard of that. So yeah, we had a team Among Us outing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And played till like 9 p.m. at night, in the office. We had a couple drinks, and pizza, and I was playing with them, right? And then the other thing that I do more on a company-wide thing, and this is I guess one of the beauties of the pandemic, is having company virtual social hours, right? And I do this. I used to do this on a weekly basis, and then I was like, oh my gosh, this is too much. Then I dialed it back to a biweekly basis. Now it's a monthly basis because it takes a lot of work to actually prepare for these events.
Yeah.
But that allows me to say, interact with all the staff in the company. It's not even just like it's not even just like a networking thing. Like you're just
Mm-hmm.
talking, right? We'll even play games during those social hours. And I would even, talk to each person or call people out and talk to them. And, it's about being relational,
Mm-hmm.
bringing that family culture, as I mentioned, in FloShip. And, honestly, I mean, there's still a lot of things that we need to do. It's hard to sort of get that people element, in a company. I'll give another example. Like we're even doing a camping trip, probably at the end of the month or early March. And what better way to be really intimate with people in a camping trip where basically have no choice but to be with each other for like, a day and a half,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's team building, right? It's family building.
Yeah.
And hopefully that encourages more of the open door sort of policy that you're looking for.
We're just going to close off this segment, right, and move on to the last segment of the podcast known as the Epic Questionnaire. So basically, this is just a rapid fire question session with you. And
Okay.
yeah, so you can just answer as you please. All right, as quickly
Okay.
as you can. All right, so Steve Sir, with the Epic Questionnaire, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. One word that you love the most.
Baby, because it's my wife. I call her baby.
Oh, I thought
Sure.
you were going to have one soon. Okay.
No,
One word that you dislike the most.
I can't. Something like that.
If you could have a conversation with one person, fictional, non-fictional, dead or alive, who would that be?
Abraham Lincoln.
What do you say to yourself in the mirror every morning?
I can do this.
Favorite dish to eat?
Korean food. It's called sundubujjigae. It's like
sundubujigae.
the spicy tofu soup.
Tofu stew. Yeah. Favorite travel spot or the next travel spot once borders open up?
I've been to somewhere called Punta Cana, which is in the Dominican Republic or the Caribbean Ocean. To this day, the best beach that I've been to, white sand, clear waters. Wish I could find that somewhere in Asia. If anyone knows, please let me know. I'd be there.
Something that you've always wanted to do but have yet to do so.
I would love to maybe go to Antarctica and just explore and be an Eskimo for a day or two.
What does retirement look like to you?
Well, I always thought that I was never designed to be sort of stagnant or not really doing anything. And so even if I'm retired, I feel like I would be involved, volunteering in some sort of way. Maybe maybe going to Africa or somewhere third world and trying to support people, help them, financially or just serve them. And I think I'll probably be doing a lot of maybe like mentoring and just helping the next wave of leaders as well.
And how do you want to be remembered? What's your legacy?
I think as an Asian, American, just being a trailblazer, to say that, hey, Asians can also be global leaders, but also that you can be able to run a company in an ethical way, without having to cut corners. And that's the real formula for a long sustaining company. So yeah, I mean, that's what I would want to be represented as.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the Epic Questionnaire with Steve Sir. So Steve, thanks so much for spending over an hour with us today, and sharing so much of your story. We really, really appreciate it. And definitely, we got to do another one.
Thanks a lot. No, I really appreciate it. This was great. Helps me reflect a lot, and hopefully I was able to just help people to understand my journey, and hopefully it was enlightening, for some of you as well.
Fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of wisdom that you can definitely share. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you do like this content, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, do what you need to do. All right. And you guys have a great week ahead. We'll see you again next week. Bye.